Hey, good afternoon, friends. Today is Sunday, July the 21st, 2024, and the time now is 4:56 p.m. So, today I am basically making the first video talk or program for the playlist series, which is Trends and Headlines in African Politics, Culture, and Domestic Affairs. Once again, this playlist series is Trends and Headlines in African Politics, Culture, and Domestic Affairs. Today, I am going to talk about three topics or events or issues, okay, that basically transpired in Africa or has a far-reaching implication in Africa. And for these events, one basically just transpired recently. It is a headline that I noticed today, and the others basically I am talking about them late. Okay, but the implication, the consequence continue in Africa. So these events or topics are: one, in South Africa, the authorities in South Africa basically discovered on a farm a multi-million-dollar facility on a farm, basically manufacturing or producing meth, the drug methamphetamine. And when I came across the news, okay, I did some research and read about it. It is very interesting that it basically made me to flashback. And I think about a year or so ago or 2 years ago, they basically discovered drugs worth about 200 or so million dollars. Okay, so I basically flash back. Now, in Africa, one, because of poverty, the weakness of the government, okay, destabilization, and the inability of the various governments and countries or security apparatus to maintain the borders. Drugs are flowing through Africa. Africa or Liberia was a transit point, okay, for drugs going to Europe. And one of the articles that I read about the situation in South Africa, it is said that South Africa could be one of the most important markets for drugs, for drug dealership. So that is a very serious problem for a country with a large majority poor population that is in Africa. When drug is an issue, I hope that the South African government is taking it very seriously, okay, and try to not so much get on the bandwagon with the rhetoric, war on drug, but they have to create a very strong and serious system that tackle the issue. Not so much to fight off the manufacturing and proliferation of drugs in South Africa, but also to produce and execute for the people so that they do not turn to drug use. So the second topic basically pertains to situation in Kenya where lots of women have been making accusation and also trying to take to court British soldiers who basically raped them. And some of these women are in their 70s and many of them have died. And it is said that the idea of British soldiers raping women in Kenya goes back to the 1950s. Okay? Many of these women have died, and many of them who are alive, they are very old. Okay? They are in their 70s and so on. But then you have the allegations, okay, or the event transpiring recently of young people in their 20s and so, or early 30s, who are basically making allegation that they were raped. In many cases, they were raped even in their own homes. And in other cases, they were basically ambushed by British soldiers and then they are raped. Now, in many cases, these women okay, some of them have conceived mixed race children who their fathers have returned to the United Kingdom, to Britain, and they are not helping these women to take care of these babies. In addition, these women are basically facing issues in their community where they are ostracized because they were raped, and they have mixed race babies who to the locals do not belong there. So this is an issue, it's a societal issue in Africa that African governments needs to try to solve. This is also an issue that can lead to revolution in Africa because the African people are getting angry every day. For example, if you have a situation where there is a mass protest, okay, in Kenya because of this sexual offense and raping of women by soldiers, the possibility that some of these women and even the older one could support such revolution or protest is very much ripe, and it is serious because many are living with the pain, the trauma of being raped and conceiving children, okay, as a result of rape. So there is a very serious thing going on that I hope the Kenyan government and other governments in Africa begin to pay attention and follow suit. Now, in Africa and in countries such as Kenya, the fact that British soldiers or Britain is still able to have its soldiers to train in a foreign land, in an African land, it is shameful. Britain has land. Let the British government or the British military army train its soldiers in Britain or in British land. In addition, former British colonies and members of the West, the conceptual West, the white West, such as Australia, Canada, has a huge amount of land, which they can basically give or allocate a very significant amount of land for the United Kingdom, for Britain to train its soldiers. The fact that Britain is able to train its soldiers in Africa, this is not so much of a friendship, okay, of an equal diplomatic activity. This is a form of colonialism as well. If you are saying that Kenya is free, it's an independent country, why are you training your soldiers in Kenya? Why is Kenya allowing the former colonial master to still bring troops again into Kenyan territories to train these troops? Now, they are training, they are bombing things, they are doing this and doing that. That creates stress to the environment, okay, to the biosphere. It is interesting that whether we are talking about the United States, the United Kingdom of Britain, France, many of these former colonial masters countries, it is very interesting that it is a tradition that they continue to maintain overseas territories, okay, or to still implant in people's countries their military with the statement or the justification that they are using these facilities to train their military. Whether we are talking about just training or it is flat out colonialism, take your soldiers home and train them in your country. African countries should not be in the business as of now, currently, to allow foreign countries, the former colonial masters most especially, to continue to reintroduce their military, their soldiers into Africa, okay, on African territories, with the justification, whether we are talking about truthfully or not, to train their soldiers. So the fact that British soldiers are in Kenya training, it is also shameful for the Kenyans and for Africa. So once again, I find it to be very sad and shameful that a country such as Kenya is allowing or continue to allow Britain to station soldiers on Kenyan territory. Okay? Of course, they are saying that this is just to train British soldiers. Okay? So why is it that Kenya is a military base to train British soldiers? Why don't they go and train in Britain, in British territories, or in Australia, or in Canada? This is one of the reasons, okay, or one of the reality that clearly shows that Africa or African countries are still not independent. Britain will never go to China to station its troops, okay, or soldiers on Chinese territory. For example, after the return of Hong Kong to China, have the British returned? No, they are not going to return. So I think this demonstrates control of Kenya or control of African countries. The fact that they continue to engage in relationship or activities with the foreign or colonial masters, former colonial masters countries, which allows the colonial master countries, okay, or country to continue to station its troops, its soldiers onto the territories of the former colony, such as Kenya in this case. I hope the Kenyan people and the Kenyan government do have a plan and they are serious about ending such relationship. Now, in terms of the women, I hope that Kenyan society embrace the women and the young children who are conceived as a result of rape or whatever, consensual relationship with British soldiers, okay? They are Africans, they are Kenyan. But in terms of the relationship between the soldiers and the women, Africans, we have to acknowledge the fact that whenever you have a military base in your country, two important things we should consider among many. One is that, in this case with a powerful country, to a greater extent, these soldiers, when they misbehave, they are not held accountable, especially when countries such as Kenya is weak. Also, a foreign military in your country, in your territory, means that your women are either going to be raped or they are going to be engaging in a relationship where they fall prey to the soldier or soldiers of the other country that is basically planting, okay, or operating a base within your country. This is the situation in various places around the world where the women and the locals, okay, or the culture of the various countries, okay, in which foreign military bases are established, fall victim. Now, I just want to stress that. But now the third topic pertains to Mali. Now, in Mali, the government, the military government, is supposed to be lifting the suspension on the activities of political parties. Now, that I do feel as if it is the worst thing that the military government, or junta as they say, is doing. Mali doesn't need political parties as of now. If the situation in the country is working fine, you do not need to introduce the political party, at least not now. We as Africans need to acknowledge the fact that we are different compared to the West or the rest of the world. Africa or African countries must initiate a policy, okay, or must establish a form of government that is unique to the situation of Africa or the situation of the distinct African countries. We do not need political parties or election as of now, and Mali in this case doesn't need it. Democracy or political party or parties can slowly be reintroduced as society changes. Right now, when we have situations when these political parties and elections are manipulated by the rich and powerful countries and institutions around the world, when you introduce political parties, you are basically saying, come and get me. I want to fall victim to you, to your power, your prestige, and your money. So I do feel and I hope that the military government in Mali basically pull back. For now, Mali or any other African countries do not need political parties, especially if the military governments are working fine, okay, to execute for the well-being of the people. Political party and the so-called democracy and election nonsense that we are seeing, it's one of the reasons that Africa is what it is, because they enabled the rich and the powerful countries to manipulate the situations in Africa. Africa does need strong military or strong government that will fight back to prevent outside influence or intervention, but to overhaul society for the betterment of the African people, or in this case, Mali. So once again, this is supposed to be a brief program or talk or video. I'm going to end by going back, okay, referring to the events or topics of this video or program or talk, however you want to say it. The first one being in South Africa, where the authorities there basically discovered on a farm a facility of production, manufacturing of methamphetamine, which basically worth about 104 million United States dollar or so. And the last time when I looked, I think the conversion to the South African rand, I think it is about 2 billion South African rand. So that is a lot of money. Now, it is said that 4 people were arrested, including the owner of the farm and 2 Mexican citizens or Mexican nationals. That is a very serious thing, and I do feel that South African government and other African governments need to pay close attention, because not only that you have to worry about your own people at home engaging in such activities, but when you start having outside influence, Africa must be very careful and must take this seriously, because we are seeing what is happening in the Americas with the drug market or the drug cartels, where people are killed and drug is all over the place. Now, on a continent such as Africa, which have seen endless civil wars, okay, throughout the many decades or the few decades since decolonization, quote unquote, and guns are out there all over the continent, and we are seeing sentiment of future destabilization or conflict. The introduction of drug production in South Africa or in Africa, the sentiment of drug being transit, okay, or being transitioned through Africa is a serious thing that the African governments and societies must pay close attention to. Now, countries around the world are combating drug flows or drug production or trafficking, and China is one such country where they don't play. When people are caught with drug, they are dealt with accordingly. Africa perhaps can find its own way or ways to deal with the transporting, the production, or the proliferation of drugs. It doesn't have to be what other countries are doing, but must do it in a way that is unique to the current situation or situations of Africa, where the society and the government and the security apparatus combat drugs without traumatizing the people. Now, in terms of Kenya, it is a unique situation. It is a shame in that the Kenyan government and the Kenyan people continue to allow Britain to maintain soldiers, okay, or military base in Kenya. It is shameful in that case. But also it is shameful that the government doesn't seem to be doing anything or fighting for the people, those people who are women who were raped by British soldiers, who are experiencing the trauma of being raped and also having children which were conceived with these British soldiers not being taken care of. The Kenyan government, I hope, can basically gather lawyer and fight this in Kenyan court and also in the international court. Now, in terms of the situation with Mali, Mali is one of those countries in the Sahel, in West Africa, and in Africa, which continue to show Africa the way. However, the whole idea of reintroducing political parties activities in Mali, I hope that the government, the military government there, pay close attention and be very careful. The government must slowly do so, or at least trying to politicize their people to be pan-Malian, okay? To think pan-Africanist, pan-Malian, or pan-Mali, or whatever they say it. You do not want to reintroduce political parties, which then could fall victim to outside influence, okay? Because they got the money, they have the money. However, I hope the government and the people continue to fight, because so far, Mali, Burkina Faso, and others, they've made Africa proud. And many Africans are singing the songs of revolution in Africa because of these governments and military leadership. Now, my friends, I am going to end here. I hope that you tell me what you think. But most importantly, I want to thank you for being a member of the Echoing Voice community. And thank you once again for watching the Echoing Voice. Peace.